Hi, I'm Lorena and I wanted to do a tutorial on the Crown of Thorns block. What I love about this place that we're at is if you know how to do a 9 patch and you know how to do a half square triangle, you can do some really beautiful blocks. A lot of the blocks out there have a mixture of squares and half square triangles blended together. Now I wanted to show some of the blocks that we've already done. And these are the blocks. This is a half square triangle block that we did together. And I made, I'm going to make 4 of these. I think I already just have 2 done. And I already made, and this is a 9 patch. Now, if you know how to do a 9 patch block and a half square triangle block, then you'll be able to do this Crown of Thorns block that I have planned for us. I did this at the church. I taught this block and it came out beautiful. If you're able to do the 2 blocks that we just did, you're unstoppable. You can do a whole bunch of beautiful blocks now. So let me show you the block. So this is called the Crown of Thorns block. Hopefully you can see it. This is called the Crown of Thorns block. So here I am, and I have all my half square triangles already cut, and I used the thangles that was 2-inch, which when they were completely done, this square ends up being 2.5 inches. And that means this square piece is 2.5 inches. So here I have my Crown of Thorns block all set up and ready to go. And what I usually tend to do is I sew from top to bottom. And this way, I literally put this piece to this piece, this one to this, and I pin it. Okay, so I have everything pinned, and what I'm going to sew is I'm going to sew this one, and then add this one to here. And I'm going to add each piece as I'm coming to the sewing machine. Okay, so let's start sewing. Okay, I just finished sewing my pieces from the top. I sewed here, these 2 pieces, these 2 pieces, and then I went to this second set, this set, this set, and I went up and down. I hope you understand what I'm saying. You can either add your last piece here, or you could go ahead and sew these 2 together. It just depends on your preference or however you can organize yourself in your mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together. And so I'm going to go ahead and fold it over and make sure that I pin it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my piece and start working from left to right. I can lay them down exactly how I grab them. I hope you can see that. I'm going to pull it back a little bit. And I'm going to cut the chain off. And you can see, let me take this pin out. Is that right? Oh. There we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and add this last piece to each row. I'm going to go ahead and sew the last piece to each row. And here you can see your pattern. Now, at this point is when I pull out the iron and my ironing board and I iron each piece. Remember? So now I'm here with the ironing board and I'm going to go ahead and start ironing my pieces. And I'm going to go with this row going in one direction. Now, I'm going to get this piece and I'm going to bring it to the piece, to my first piece. I'm going to move it over. And then I'm going to iron this in the opposite direction. Hopefully, yep, I have my arm in the way. And there's this piece. Now I'm going to turn this over. Now this piece is going to go the opposite of this one. I'm going to scoot it over, scoot my pieces over. Now this is going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to scoot that over, and this piece is going to go in the opposite direction of this one. And I just pull the end of the line, and I make sure. And now I'm going to iron the top of it. So I don't have no seams. So what I'm going to do is, I always start from my left side to my right side. So I'm going to get this piece and flip it over. And I'm going to pin it. And then I'm going to get my left one to my right side. I'm going to flip it and pin it, because I know this is the space that I want to sew this line. And I'm going to leave this one hanging out for a little bit. So now we go back to the machine. Okay, so I pinned all my seams. Every single one. I checked them to make sure that they were lined up together. So here I have sewn both of my pieces, and what I want to do is I want to iron them, and I want to iron them towards the direction that I have already ironed them, so that it's a flat, and then go out and open the seam. And as I move, let me move this over and go ahead and just open the seam. And what this does is it sets the seam. What's setting the seam is fabric stretches and it opens, it expands and stretches, and the heat sets that stitch into the fabric itself. And so I'm going to turn this and just make sure that everything's nice and so you have two options. You can sew this last piece to this area of the block, and usually I tend to start from left to right, so I tend to want to sew this down and then do this last piece last. It's all up to you. Or you can sew this seam, and that's just preference on how you want to do it. But this way it keeps the block in order. So I'm going to go ahead and do what I normally do. So here I am, and I have my pieces pinned, and I hope you still remember from the tutorial of half square triangle block that area where the seams intersect each other, and I drew myself a line, making sure that I stayed and stitched exactly on top of it so that I don't lose my points. And so now I'm going to get my piece, and I'm going to go ahead and start sewing it. Make sure this is together. And here I am again. I don't know if you can see, I'm going to zoom in. this is where I have my 2 intersections, and that's where my point line is. And I want to make sure I don't lose it, so I drew a line. So I'm going to go ahead and open. So here I am, and I've just sewed this seam. I'm going to go ahead and take every pin that I had. I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to iron. And I'm only going to iron the section that I just seamed. And now I'm going to open it, and I'm going to let it fall. And then I'm going to iron now the block should be this way. But by now you already know the pattern of the block. And now all I need to do is I need to sew this last end and onto my block. And so we do the same process again. So here I am, I'm ready to sew my last piece onto my block. Remember your intersection so you don't lose your peaks again. Your peaks. Take it off. Let me zoom out a little bit. Take off the points. Have my iron ready. Iron your bottom and then open. And your back should just, as you're ironing every area together, it should just be as flat as you can make it. And when you roll it over, here's your block. Okay, when you have your points, that's when they matters, especially in this block, because you want the points. That's the kind of crown of thorns area. These little points are the thorns, or they represent the thorns. I hope you liked this tutorial. I really had a lot of fun doing it with you. Have a great day.